So this here is Bowser, formerly of Sha-Na-Na, and you are listening to the Claw's Corner. Grease for peace.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Claw's Corner. Today's guest is a singer, actor, Broadway star, television host, voiceover artist, game show contestant, and trumpeter. His bands include Lady Rain, Milkbone, Pray for the Soul of Betty, Adler's Appetite, as well as partnering and performing with Postmodern Jukebox and Jesse's Girl. His acting credits include The Bold and the Beautiful, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, Z-Rock, Unforgettable, Madam Secretary, Mozart in the Jungle, and Kittens in a Cage. His off-Broadway and Broadway credits include Rent, The Wedding Singer, The Toxic Avenger, Jesus Christ Superstar, Jekyll and Hyde, and Rock of Ages. In 2005, he competed in the fourth season of American Idol. He is notable for being among the first contestants to compete using the rock idiom. He was last seen starring in the off-Broadway hit Rock and Roll Man, portraying legendary DJ Alan Freed, which ended its run on Friday, September 1st. A national tour for the show is coming soon. So what the hell am I waiting for? Let's get right to it. Please welcome the extremely talented and the extremely versatile Constantine Maroulis to the Claw's Corner. Constantine, how was that?
Whoa, what an intro there, Rich. Thanks for all that. You left out the master of disaster, the king of sting. It felt like Apollo Creed there. No, that's great. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here with you. I know we've run into each other a few times over the years, but here we are finally.
Yes. So let's get right to it. I last saw you, it was funny because I was in New York. I was looking for something to see, and the girl I was with wanted to see the Michael Jackson one, and we wasn't on the board. And then I saw a Rock and Roll Man. I said, wait a minute, that's Constantine's play. And I want to talk about that because I enjoyed it so much. As I mentioned in the intro, you portray legendary disc jockey Alan Freed. And so for people who don't know who he is, give me a brief synopsis of who he is and what he did.
Sure, Rock and Roll Man. That's been the show I've been running the last few months in New York for a pre-Broadway run, and just it's been such a pleasure. You know, anytime an actor gets to create a role really from the ground up and originate a lead role like this, it's always an honor. And to work with so many great professionals on the creative side and the actors, I get to share the stage with. It's been really a pleasure. Yeah, Alan Freed. A Midwest white DJ in the 40s, obviously into the 50s and 60s. Sort of ran into a guy, Leo Mintz, one day at a bar, and Leo invited him down to the Record Rendezvous, where they were having these after-school kind of rock and roll dance parties. Before really anyone called it rock and roll, they were playing black artists. Kids were dancing together, hanging out, partying, just vibing to the music during segregation, when obviously this was something that was not acceptable in our country. Alan Freed was the one that put that music on popular radio. He coined the phrase rock and roll. He elevated black artists when no one else would. You know, essentially these songs from Little Richard and beyond were only getting played on popular radio when they were covered by white artists. So Alan Freed himself was quite a disruptor, a crusader. He had a bit of a racist family background. His mother, you know, was ashamed that his father was Jewish. He had to hide that. You know, the government came after him. I think in post-World War II America, this was just not acceptable behavior, you know, from someone with a platform to both be Jewish and to elevate black artists at a time in our country when we were, you know, when they were trying to set up the American dream. It didn't include minorities, you know, and Alan Freed really was somebody that laid his life on the line for the movement of rock and roll.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was very well put. You know, I first heard of Alan Freed in 1978. There was a movie that came out called American Hot Wax, and it starred Jay Leno. He must have been maybe 19 or 20 years old. Who else was in there?
Fran
Lorraine
Drescher
Newman.
is in it.
Fran Drescher, Lorraine Newman, such a great movie. And I said, then I started doing my research on him. I said, oh my God, this guy has done so much. And I feel so bad for him because you mentioned that the government was going after him. And in your play, I want to talk about that because basically it's like the last couple of days of his life and sort of like a dream state type thing. But I mean, it was all about the payola scandal. And he really wasn't the one that started it. But they went after him because he was the most notable. He had the biggest name, and I think they wanted to make an example out of him, which really wasn't fair because there was so many other people that were doing it. And was it like, how did you do a lot of research for the play, or did you just sort of portray him in your own way?
Yeah, American Hot Wax kind of missed me. I mean, I'm a little too young for that, but looking back, I've seen some clips of it. It seems to really just show like a sort of very frenetic moment in his life.
Yeah.
Doesn't really give a beginning, middle, and end to what was happening. But you get a chance to see the chaos that was his life. He was the king of rock and roll, not Elvis. He could push a button and put someone on a national level. And yes, they targeted him with payola. I mean, what is payola? Payola is everywhere. It's still prevalent. You think that the artists that get truly billions of streams on Spotify now are really getting billions of streams? You don't think that they're paying to have those numbers cranked? You don't think that it's prevalent in society on so many levels today? We seem to sort of we find a target, an enemy, and we go after that person. It happens obviously now in our social setting and political setting, on both sides of the aisle. So I think for me, Alan Freed, at the end of the day, yeah, he was someone that deteriorated fast with his fame, and drank himself to death by 43 years old.
Wow.
I think that tells you what kind of scrutiny he was under. But he was loved and admired, and he did things his way. Yes, probably a flawed man. He had several wives. We've worked with the family over the last couple of years in development. His surviving son Lance and his daughter-in-law, and we've gotten to know him. But yes, I've done some research. I've definitely I have a bunch of his albums from live shows. There are a lot of clips online, great audio stuff that I tried to capture with the voice and a bit of the look. And thereafter the actor's job is to kind of fill in the blanks, and no one wants to watch an imitation. The good thing from my perspective is he's not someone that's so known. He's not someone like a later Dick Clark, or much later with the evening talk show hosts like Johnny Carson and such, that we have such a vision of. We know their voice, their sound, their swagger, their whole vibe. He was sort of early on enough where he was this enigma in a way, and he was gone so early. But my mother, she saw Alan Freed shows in the 50s in Brooklyn. So pretty cool that I've been able to bring this character to life. And, we hope to have a long life down the road as well.
No, most definitely. You know what I feel bad about? Because with the payola scandal, like you said, it's being done still, maybe in different ways, but he brought so many bands to the forefront who probably would never have a chance to make it. But because he was he was one of the many that were doing it, but he gave these bands a chance and they became really big. And sometimes I don't think they would have even been known or maybe as big as they actually were if it's not for what he did. So I think he actually did a good thing, but maybe it wasn't the way he was supposed to do it. But yeah, he really ruffled some feathers.
Sure. And isn't that ultimately what rock and roll is?
Yes, exactly.
Punk rock, and just, the rock and roll attitude is just disruption. And that's sort of what I was really drawn to. But, it's hard to play someone that's flawed, but equally, someone that elevated artists. So for me, I had to play I found the good in him. And I know, based on dozens of interviews with Little Richard, how fond he was of of Alan Freed. So, ooh, Alan Freed, he was my friend. He was my friend, and all of this. So they loved him.
Yeah.
They loved him.
Oh,
He
yeah.
did everything for them. And you dig even deeper and deeper, there's some evidence that he was African American,
Mhm.
and that in his family there was there that they were that there was African Americans in his family line. So that makes it even more interesting. And then there might be some evidence that he was involved with some of the artists as well, like a
Yeah.
Laverne Baker sexually and such. So he was like a bit of a rock star.
Yeah, most definitely. That's what I'm glad. Maybe it wasn't recently, but I know he's inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which he definitely deserves to have a plaque there. I'm glad he was posthumously. But
I believe, yeah, I believe he was in the first class
yeah.
inducted with Chuck Berry and Little Richard.
Now, how accurate was with the facts with that final concert where they wanted to shut it down, and Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis said, "You know what? We're going to play anyway. We don't care. We're here for rock and roll." Was that
Oh
fairly
yeah, there
accurate?
definitely was a riot in Boston that
Yeah.
caused, just mayhem. And Boston remains, I went to school there. It's a tough town.
Mhm.
It's funny, you think like Kennedy, uh, Massachusetts and Boston, quite like a liberal type of town, but underneath there's a lot of divide with the ethnic groups that came over to the States, and from the Irish to the Italians and the Jews. There was a lot of collision on
Yeah.
many levels with them, and it was an Irish town, and they didn't want at the time, they didn't want black artists there. They didn't want, Jewish promoters bringing them there, and there was a lot of pushback. So one likes to think like we're past all that, but I don't know. I feel like every time we take a few steps ahead, we take, a few more back. And Alan Freed was really at the forefront of the civil rights movement, before Dr. King and whatnot. It was really Alan Freed that put his life on the line as well.
Yeah. No. Well, you mentioned earlier you're working with such a great cast. I want to mention some of the people in it. Joey Pantoliano, he played Leo Mintz and Morris Levy. He has two parts. In the first half, he's Leo Mintz, and then second half, he's Morris Levy. Bob Ari plays J. Edgar Hoover. But I got to talk about one of my favorite actors besides you, and that was Roderick Covington, who played Little Richard. He was great. He had the crowd laughing, singing. I wish the only thing I was mad about with this play was that there was not enough room to get up and dance, because I could not stay in my seat. It was wanting me to get up, rock and roll. And then I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, but you can correct me. Is it Valisa Lakay? She played Laverne Baker.
Valicia Lakay. She's a Tony nominee. She had played Diana Ross in Motown about 10 years ago. She was incredible in that. So she plays Laverne Baker in this. Yeah, we are so blessed to have an all-star cast. Valicia every night delivers. I would love to explore that relationship with her and Alan a little bit further in the next version of the show, and I know we will. And that's what we've learned with this off-Broadway run so much. What works, what doesn't work, what we need to insert, how we want to enhance certain plot points and moments as well. Roderick is incredible, obviously, in our story, which is told in this sort of like deathbed fever dream of Alan Freed's, where he circles back and he's on trial for his legacy. What is he going to leave behind? He's essentially he's essentially sacrificed his life for this work and this artistry and these artists. What's going to happen to his name and his legacy, because he's basically penniless and alone in the desert in Palm Springs. And so he's in this sort of fever dream where Little Richard, who always was his friend, is his defense attorney in this kind of fantasy trippy trial that helps us kind of build this bubble of like flashbacks and moments in his life. And we think it's a very unique approach to the sort of bio musical. And audiences have really loved it, but it also allows Little Richard to have this, like, you know, the funny thing is everything he's saying is stuff that Little Richard has really said, like let it all hang out. I am the bronze Liberace, you know, and he's just said wild stuff. And he's like, everybody knows who the king of rock and roll is, and it damn sure wasn't Elvis, you know. And like he said so much crazy stuff like that. So Roderick was careful to not make it all a bit and make it real and grounded. And we have that great scene in Act 2 where he's like, come on, Alan, it's time, let's go. You know, he's like, no, he's like, you and I, we're always going to be a target, you know, people like you and me. He said that there's only one thing more dangerous than a pretty black boy with a microphone, and that's the crazy Jewish boy that put him on the radio. He's like, we need each other, you know. And it's like he kind of gets that validation finally, you know. And he's like, you're right, whatever comes my way, I can handle it. And I've done great things in this life in a short amount of time. He was dead by 43.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're having a good time. Obviously, Joey Pants is an icon. He was in, you know, every movie I ever loved growing up, from, you know, Goonies to La Bamba, you know, obviously The Sopranos and U.S. Marshals and The Fugitive and Matrix. Just a total icon. And I've learned a great deal from him. He and I and Roderick, it's off Broadway, baby. We share a dressing room. So we've gotten to know each other really well. And we've had so many great laughs. And yeah, he's out there singing and dancing, and at 72 years old. And wow. I know that he had a blast, but it's a lot of work. It's, I think we're all like taking a breath right now that we're on a bit of a pause, and we're like, wow, you know, my body is stiff and hurting.
So do you have
8 shows a week, you know?
Yeah. Well, do you have a chance to take a break between the off-Broadway and then the national tour? Like when?
Yeah, we have some downtime now. The next day I flew to Colorado. I played a bunch of shows there in Denver and Vail, solo concerts, and I'm back now, and I'm back working on the record. My new single Comeback just came out, and Daydream came out a few weeks before that. So they're out there doing really well at streaming. You could stream Daydream or Comeback or any of my new material anywhere you find music, from Spotify to Apple Music, or you can always go to ConstantineMaroulis.com. You know, everything's there, tour dates. I have some solo concerts coming up. And I'd love to have, you know, your listeners there. There's some local ones to New Jersey as well. There's one out in, I forget, maybe it's Basking Ridge, New Jersey in October. There's a venue, a performing arts center there. Just go to my website, the Zumansky Theater, I believe, October 14th, which is also the night of my high school reunion. So wow. I'm a little like, I'm torn. But this show has been on the book, so I feel like I'm going to go do a great show and then come crashing into the high school reunion in the 11th hour and steal the show. That's how I see it in my head.
Well, that's what I love about living in Connecticut, because New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, I mean, everything is so close to me. So wherever you're playing, I'm going to be looking at your schedule, and you're going to see me in the front row at one of your shows. I can't wait.
Cool. Yeah, those solo concerts are fun. They're less like Rock of Ages or Foreigner's Journey. They're more like Broadway songbook shows. Yeah. Where I do my original material, but stripped down with like just piano and some stories, everything from Sondheim and Leonard Bernstein to Frank Wildhorn and Andrew Lloyd, Webber and such, and kind of, a bit more of a soundscape of my career and life. Yeah. So those are a lot of fun and very intimate. So definitely get your tickets, ConstantineMaroulis.com. Are you doing Chiller this?
I'll be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be there this Halloween or not, but we'll see. Maybe. All
right. Yeah, and I see you like probably every 2-3 years or so.
It's important to not be at like everyone. Yeah. Remember, there was like gun scare at the one I went to last.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you missed the
always
night.
something.
You missed the stabbing last time. So
That's what I meant. There was
yeah.
a stabbing, but then a guy had a gun. Like, I don't even know. It was a lot. And but Chiller's the best. It's the only show I do. I always meet all these agents there that are like, oh, I could book you all over the country. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, go fetch. And then they don't. So then I just do Chiller. It's in my backyard. You know, I go and I set up, I make some money, I see the fans, it's a good time. And yeah, more than anything, it's just a great hang.
Most definitely. I always have a great time there. So for people listening to this, don't worry about the guns, don't worry about the knives. It's actually a fun time. You'll be safe. Check out Chiller. But
yeah, I mean, it's a great time for sure.
Oh my God, yeah, and there's so many great people there. So I know that we're on limited time, so I want to go over some of the highlights, because one of the things is I am a huge horror movie fan, and I love low budget movies, and I'm a huge Lloyd Kaufman Trauma fan. And I know you played the lead in Toxic Avenger, so I want to talk about that one, because we all know about Rock of Ages. I loved Rock of Ages, but I mean, some of the people who might not know about the underground world of Trauma. Tell me about working with that.
Yeah, Lloyd is incredible. He's still out there hustling and writing and making movies and toys and such. So David Bryan from Bon Jovi, he's a Tony-winning composer of Memphis. Big show about 10 or 15 years ago. And
that.
Joe DiPietro, his writing partner, they're a great team. They've wrote and adapted The Toxic Avenger, directed by John Rando, who's now directing Back to the Future on Broadway. And he was best known for Urinetown, which was probably 20 years ago, which was just a wild show. So Toxie actually ran off Broadway in basically the same space I just closed Rock and Roll Man in, at New World Stages. Also the same venue I started Rock of Ages in 15 years ago. So New World Stages is a great venue, at least it used to be, for new works. It's gotten a little corporate for me. Rock and Roll Man kind of grew out of that place real quick. Rock and Roll Man's a pretty big show for a little theater, you know, and
yeah,
you know, it's not the old Rock of Ages days there where we used to party all night. They kept the bar open and stuff. So anyway, those are the old days. Broadway and corporations have evolved since those days. But so they had a good run off Broadway with the actor Nick Cordero, who was a dear friend of mine. We share the same birthday, who died over COVID. His story with his wife Amanda was quite known and out there, and he was this giant of a guy and just so talented. So he had played Melvin Ferd III and Toxic Toxie, but the show kind of just stalled right off Broadway. So they wanted to revamp it. They hired me. We brought it to Houston, to the Alley Theater, which is an iconic venue where so many great shows have started. And Houston is a very sophisticated theater scene and great city. We brought it there. We revamped the whole show. We recast it. We had new songs, new choreography, a massive, cool set, wonderful special effects that we were using. And it's only 5 actors, the show, which is a producer's dream, because Melvin plays obviously both Toxie and himself. Sarah is the blind librarian who was in love with Toxie, but it's sort of a little bit of like a Little Shop kind of a thing there. And then there's the crazy mayor who tries to take down Toxie, and then there's the 2 guys that just play double as all the bullies and such that throw Melvin into the toxic waste, and he becomes the Toxic Avenger out to save New Jersey, of course. So the music is great. It's great. And the funny thing is, like, when the show was happening, Chris Christie was really having his huge moment as the governor of New Jersey. So there was some fun kind of tie-ins.
Yeah.
And it just worked. We got tremendous reviews out of town. The show was coming to Broadway. all of this. There's just, if I had a buck for every show that was coming to Broadway, I'd be a very rich man. And so it just, in true Broadway fashion, it's like American Idol back in the day. Season 4 was the greatest, the best. Carrie Underwood, Constantine Maroulis,
Yeah.
Bo Bice, and then we ride this wave, and they're really setting up Carrie Underwood, and she's doing all this stuff, and I'm doing stuff, and then boom, it's the next season. And then it's Daughtry, then it's Taylor Hicks and Ace and Kelly Pickler and Kat McPhee, and then it's like, wait, what about us? Right? So there's a moment, there's a window. We got tremendous, and I waited that window out. I wanted to move it. I know John, the director, really wanted to move it to Broadway, but then the Nederlanders called me with Jekyll and Hyde and a truck of money, and to take Jekyll and Hyde out on the road for a year in a brand new production of it, all reimagined with Deborah Cox, and to come to Broadway for a summer thereafter. And it was an offer I couldn't refuse. So then that pushed Toxie down the road a little bit further. And that's just the business,
Yeah.
I jumped in as a sort of de facto producer and tried to get more interest for it again. And there was just a window, and it passed, unfortunately. It's a great show that gets licensed. It had a great life in London, not with me. And it started getting buzz over there. So that's the cool thing with shows. Not every show has to be a gigantic Broadway hit. Shows can run and get licensed all over the world. Rock of Ages, it's licensed to Jewish community centers now, and high schools and middle schools. We have kid versions. There's community theaters. It's done all over the world, and that's one way to keep shows going. With Rock and Roll Man, we're not sure exactly. We want to find some partnerships on the road. Maybe go do some sit downs in towns like Cleveland. That's a big backdrop for the show, and maybe find the right window. Broadway's back after the pandemic, but it's not all the way back. The big shows are always going to do well. New shows are having more trouble finding footing. So, you don't want to just open on Broadway just to open. You want to have a window where you can have success. So that's my hope.
Yeah,
and in the meantime, I'm going to be doing concerts and putting out new music, and there's some other interesting theater stuff happening. Obviously, there's no film and TV right now. I mean, there's nothing. The strike is a sad state of affairs, with the writers and our acting union, SAG, and AFTRA. We're fighting, but I don't know. I don't know how this ends. I don't think it ends anytime soon, unfortunately.
I know. I mean, how long has it been going on? At least, I want to say almost a year, or maybe even longer now. It's been
not quite that long, but no, the actors walked in maybe May.
Oh, okay. So, but
March,
when did the writers
May.
go on strike? It seems like
The writers were before that,
Yeah.
but it's been talked about like this is going to happen for over a year for sure. But in the meantime, I'm focused on the kid, my family. It's football season starting. My Giants, I have a lot of expectations for. Somehow my dead Yankees are creeping back into it. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. They're only 7 games out with over 20 games to go. They have this infusion of youth, and it'll be interesting to see if they can maybe garner the last wild card slot. That would be cool.
Right. Well, I know that we're running short on time.
Yeah.
You've done so much, and I'm trying to go over different things you've done. One of the things you mentioned, the Yankees. I want to talk about this because I live in Connecticut, not too far from Sandy Hook. I want to talk about one of the times you sang the national anthem at Yankee Stadium, and it was one of the most special times for you.
Oh yeah, that was beautiful. I believe that had to have been about 10 years ago now, because 10, if not 11, it was a home opener, if I remember, because it was in the fall. Sorry about that. And it was, Yankees, Red Sox at home, packed, sold out. We did this tribute to the kids, and then I got to sing the anthem. It's because I remember it because I was doing Jekyll and Hyde on Broadway at the time. So that's about 10 years ago now. Yeah, if not 11. So that was wonderful. I love performing the anthem. I do it well because I really feel it and believe in the words. And it's always an honor, especially to do it at some big games. I've done some really big games. I'm a Yankee fan, but I've done the Mets playoff run in 16. I've done big NFL games with Tom Brady, and a lot of Yankee Stadium, a lot of Islanders and Knicks games, and it's fun for sure. They don't pay you, but you get to come and hang, and it's a wonderful experience to kind of be on the court, meet the players, take some pictures, hang out back, in the bowels of the stadium, and some good memories for sure.
Well, I love that about you, because some people might say, "What? Talk to my agent. If I'm not getting paid, I'm not doing it." You're like, I love it. I'm passionate about it. I want to have a good time. And I love that attitude about you. It's like,
thank you.
I want to talk about one more show before we go, because I had the chance to interview Ted Neely, who played Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar, the movie. That is probably one of my all-time favorite movies growing up, one of my all-time favorite rock operas. And you had the chance to play Jesus one time and then Judas another time. So you got a chance to play both ends of the spectrum. That must have been great.
I've actually been in that show tons of times. Played like every part in it. But yeah, most recently I did Judas at the Muni, which is one of the most prestigious theaters in the country. It's like 15,000 seats, open air, St. Louis. They run a gigantic summer season there, and like the biggest Broadway stars for almost 100 years have been performing there. It's incredible, this venue, and we did a magical production of Superstar there. I mean, obviously it's a masterpiece. I think it's the greatest thing Andrew Lloyd Webber's ever done. That original concept album, the Brown album, as people call it, is incredible, with like Murray Head and all these great voices on there. Ted Neely is incredible. The movie was a big deal for me as well. Come probably 8th or 9th grade, I was just like, wow. Carl Anderson. I've gotten to meet Ted. I know his daughter pretty good. He's sent me some kind messages and signed some things for me. He's still out there rocking and rolling. He still does Superstar stuff. I don't know how. He like presents the movie and then does songs or does like a concert. But I love Superstar. I love rock opera so much that I'm actually working on a new touring show that you'll hear about soon, which is basically going to be a rock opera concert experience. So everything from like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra meets Rocktopia, where it's like classical meets rock, and the greatest singing, the greatest voices in a theatrical concert setting that I'll headline with like a group of all-stars. And we're working on packaging that now. So you'll hear about it. But look for, Constantine Maroulis classic rock opera, coming to your town sometime soon, where, we'll have clips of like Superstar and Tommy, but also like, the great moments of a Rock of Ages and the big arena rock that was basically opera, like Queen and, Kansas and Styx and such like that, like the big sort of dramatic 70s, arena rock meets, classical. So we're pretty stoked on that. It's going to be awesome. So
will this be happening after the national tour of Rock and Roll Man?
Yeah, man. For me, I'm always working and hustling and doing a lot of different things, the way a national tour works is, you don't just leave tomorrow. It essentially books a season, if not more, out. So I think more so than a national tour like I've done with Jekyll and Hyde or Rent or Rock of Ages, where like nightly or weekly you're in different cities. This would be like, we might go find like 2 or 3 different like partners out of town, like let's say Cleveland, Boston, Chicago, and go do a month sit down in each, and then swing it into Broadway, or maybe go to the West End for a few months and then bring it here, that kind of a thing.
Oh, very good.
That's with Rock and Roll Man. But the classic rock opera, yeah, definitely look for that in 24 for sure.
I cannot wait. Well, I would love to have you back on the show because I barely scratched the surface with you. In the intro, you heard what I mentioned. I still missed out some. So would you come back sometime in the future?
Yeah, sure, man. Let's do it.
All right. I'd love to have you back. All right. And so before we go, I know you basically told me what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be up to. So I guess just give my viewers some plugs where they can find you, where they can listen to you.
Yeah, man. Your boy Constantine Maroulis here, your mom's favorite American Idol finalist and Tony-nominated Broadway guy. For me, I'm definitely going to be on the road a lot playing shows. So go to ConstantineMaroulis.com. Follow me at Constantine Maroulis on Instagram. I'm all over Facebook and Twitter X as well. More so Instagram and my website. And yeah, I'm really excited about my new material. I put out Daydream this summer. Comeback just came out. My third song in that trilogy, Pieces, will be out next month in October. We're really excited about that as well. And doing a lot of solo dates and a lot of concerts coming up. ConstantineMaroulis.com.
All right.
I'll see you there.
You definitely will see me and my viewers. I hopefully listen to him. He's great. I love the single. I heard it the other night. I'm a huge fan. So, like I said, luckily I live in Connecticut. You will definitely see me at one of your shows in New Jersey, Massachusetts.
Well, thanks, Rich.
Yeah,
you're the man. I hope to see you again soon, man. Thank you for your support.
Most definitely. So that wraps up the latest episode of The Claws Corner. A huge thanks goes out to singer, actor, Broadway star, television host, voiceover artist, game show contestant, and trumpeter, Constantine Maroulis, for taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to be a guest on my show. Another tremendous thanks goes out to John Bristol of Elmwood Productions for always doing a superb job editing this show each and every week and making it available to all. I am also extremely grateful to Joseph Timothy Quirk and Rob Bull for all they do to make my show available on several Connecticut radio stations, as well as YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. Thank you both very, very much. And lastly, but definitely not least, I need to thank you, the viewer, for always tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone. And that is all she wrote. Bam.